Hey, and welcome to yet another episode of the Blue Screen Brothers. My name is Alex, and with me I got my dear beloved brother Olav. Hey, Olav.
Hello, peeps.
Hi, Beeps. And I think we got a guest as well today, isn't that?
Yeah. Well,
Guest again.
Guest
thanks
again.
for bringing me back. It's good to know that I didn't scare you off last time. So thanks for having me on, and good morning or good afternoon, everyone.
So last time we spoke, we talked a lot about NPUs and Copilot PCs, and we kind of went down that dark rabbit hole of what an AI PC is. And today we're going to talk more about the devices and the security aspects of them.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll just kickstart the show here, Chauncey.
Yeah, so maybe just as a quick recap, we talked about, to your point, the AI PC and Copilot Plus PCs, which are our latest devices that just came out, or actually just GA'd in at least the United States, last week. But I think if we kind of take a step back to March when we announced our laptop 6 and Pro 10, that was really kind of the first, I guess, foray into this idea of an AI focused or an AI driven device. One thing that I will like to say, and it's probably worth bringing it up today, is even though we call these AI PCs, the thing I like about these computers is they're just really good computers. So even if you remove the AI part from the entire story, they're just solid devices. And so I think we can kind of talk about a little bit about the AI PCs, and then absolutely we'll talk about the Copilot Plus PCs that we've announced. And then I'll go a little bit into some of the security that's coming out on the devices and how that's kind of really going to be playing into AI. So does that sound good? Sound like a good idea?
That's a good one.
Great. All right. So we talked about AI PC. Again, kind of super high level recap. It's going to have that latest Intel Core Ultra processor. Really think of the AI PC as this new, again, foray into kind of having an AI driven experience on a device, but it's also the kind of the first step in that evolution. So these devices had a little less of requirement for the AI side. Again, it's going to need to have that NPU, but it also comes with a Copilot key, and it should come with some kind of flavor of Microsoft Copilot as well. Specifically, the device itself is we have two of them that we released at that launch. So we had the Surface Pro 10. I mentioned that earlier. It's actually the device I'm using right now. It's been my daily driver that I go kind of back and forth between a few of them. But this has been my primary device, and this device honestly is just kind of the pinnacle of commercial Surface Pro. And I say that, and I call out commercial in particular because that's literally the number one focus of this device. So we only release these devices in the commercial business. So you kind of need to be able to go through either a commercial reseller to be able to pick them up, or really, work with your kind of reseller to find one. But from a feature perspective, we also baked a few commercially focused things into it. So you've got your NFC reader on Surface Pro 10 on the Wi-Fi model. But that's important for like scenarios where we're starting to use passkeys, or we're starting to use any kind of NFC based smart card, maybe to get in and sign in into your device. So it really just kind of, I think, opens up the ability for our commercial customers to be able to sign in without having to require a password. Yeah, exactly. Like I think it's funny because I had to reset a password the other day, and I realized that I've stopped using passwords. Like I've gotten so bad about using passwords, I don't remember any of them anymore, because I've moved either to a passkey or biometrics or something like that. And we'll talk about like the technology behind Windows Hello later, but it is such an important part there. So yeah, I don't know, like. Alex or Olav, like, is that like, do you guys use passwords? Are you guys using passkeys? Like, where are you guys today on that?
Basically, we use passwordless with the Authenticate wrap. But we are looking into using Passkey with the Authenticate wrap instead, because it's more secure and just about the same experience. Especially if you have the NFC, I guess it will be even easier with passkeys.
It's quite amazing that it's only when I enroll a personal computer or a phone or service for the first time, it sometimes prompts me for the password. Otherwise, it's one of these NFC devices, the FIDO2 devices, or it's the Authenticator app or the biometrics. So I think it's safe to say that it's probably only every second month that I need a password on my day-to-day job. Because it's a special case if I need my password. It's either a new device or I lost my FIDO unit at home or can't find it in my backpack. So I need something to trigger the authentication process.
Especially with a new phone, that's the hardest thing when you don't have your old phone and you need to set it up on a new phone. Then you have a lot of trouble with the authenticator app.
And to be honest, the temporary access pass have some minor steps to go, but it's getting there. So we are truly getting there. So when do we get a fully integrated Windows Hello to the Microsoft account and Entra ID so that they can roam between devices?
Ooh. Okay. You know what? I was going to say we were going to hold on talking about Windows Hello, but we'll dive into Windows Hello for a little bit, and we'll go back to the device. So it's probably worth talking about Entra ID first, and I'm not going to use a visual for this, but we'll kind of get into that. Actually, you know what? Let's do this. I'm going to use my Windows Hello visual so you guys have something to look at. So Windows Hello really had two flavors when it first came out. When Windows Hello came out way back in the day, really it was really almost just a way to kind of replace the password on a consumer front. And so if you were to activate, whatever thing, like what was the old picture? Like, you remember the picture back in Windows 8 where you can like choose certain dots on the picture, right?
Yeah. I loved it.
So
bring it back.
I kind of liked it. I actually just turned on my RT the other day and I had to remember how to get into it using that. But those kind of things, when it was kind of like the original Windows Hello, was really more about just kind of unlocking your password and getting into the device that way. And so it was really not much different than using a password. It was just a different way of using a password for all intents and purposes. Windows Hello for Business, on the other hand, so the commercial side of Windows Hello was different. It had a completely different kind of back-end structure, and it's kind of really the primary way of doing things now across both Windows Hello and Hello for Business. And in the case of Windows Hello for Business, what we did is we took kind of that historic idea of MFA and multi-factor authentication and the requirement around certificates to basically unlock and lock your credentials and your secrets, and we brought that local to the device. And more specifically, what we did is we created what we call an asymmetric key pair. And so when you created your Windows Hello for Business login or your PIN login, we would take those secrets and basically put part of it into the TPM. And so we had that secure enclave where we could kind of really cryptographically secure everything. And then you served as kind of that other point of authentication. And so when you came into your device and your face was being recognized, or you're using your PIN or you're using your fingerprint, what that would do is that would help unlock that key in the TPM, and then that would send on through a single sign-on. And then because we backed that all in Entra ID, or at the time Azure Active Directory, we enabled basically an MFA, enterprise grade MFA, locally on the device that could also do single sign-on through all of our applications. And that, honestly, it kind of changed the game from a Surface perspective, and at least from a Windows perspective, because now all of a sudden I don't have to use tokens. I don't have to use the hard keys that some folks used to, or smart cards. Now I had a device that acted as my full MFA, and because I'm using myself in addition to two other methods to verify who I was, that became really that new way to sign in. And you'll see that other folks started following, arguably. Like, we had some other device manufacturers out there that started implementing it across their devices too, right? Because it became such an industry standard. And now I think facial recognition is just kind of ubiquitous everywhere. But for Windows Hello for Business, you're going back to your question about, well, how come I can't float my credentials across the cloud and then create it in one place and then use it in another? Well, that's because it's actually a design choice. So our security team purposely made that decision. Who knows if they're going to, change their mind or come up with a different way of doing it in the future. But if you go back to what I mentioned earlier about us storing your secrets in the TPM and actually using the hardware itself as a secure enclave, very similar to passkeys, we wanted to be able to like fully verify that that device is with you, right? On top of that, for better or worse, I don't know that everyone would like the idea of their biometrics being shared over the web, right? I think that's kind of scary to some folks. Now, if you really like look into it, it's not like a picture of your face is actually moving across the web. Like that is not how actually a biometric signal works. Typically,
I'm quite sure my picture of my face is somewhere on the internet.
Yeah,
already,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, like for Windows Hello, what it's actually doing is it's taking that, it's applying it to a whole bunch of different, cryptographic lines and ones and zeros basically, and then storing that information, right? That if we were to share it over the cloud, that would be the cloud, or that would be what would be shared. But again, like even that, I think there's some apprehension in the general public to have that kind of information shared over the cloud. So right now, we do require all of our Windows Hello for Business information to stay local. And in fact, when you register Windows Hello for Business, the biometrics end up staying locally, but it's your Entra ID that becomes that connecting point across the cloud. So the Entra ID is actually arguably almost as important as Windows Hello for Business is. So long way of describing that. But the other thing I'll tell you though is like Windows Hello for Business is just a small part of that much bigger, I think, desire to secure your identity across whether that's passkeys, what we mentioned earlier, FIDO2 grade, like these kind of keys where you can kind of take those things around. And actually that is our preference or our recommendation. If you do need to have your identity available to multiple devices, or maybe you have a shared device scenario, so like in healthcare, manufacturing, and everything like that, rather than using Windows Hello, which does have to require, there's actually a limit that's on the device. So if you have like, say, Surface Pro, for instance, you can actually only register 10 biometric signatures to it. That might have increased. No, I'm pretty sure it's still at 10. And so if you have more than 10 people using that device, obviously that kind of breaks that whole Windows Hello model. So instead you use something like FIDO 2.0, and now this becomes the hardware, right? So now we're storing a part of your actual security secrets on these things. You still need to be there. So it's not like if someone stole this thing that they could sign in with it, because it still needs to be you to activate it. But this now becomes kind of an extension of that whole hardware-based security that I mentioned earlier, that hardware-based identity security. And now I can use this to sign into any device. And so
the second way around here is if you work at a help desk center and it's an open seating landscape or free seating landscape, you don't necessarily sit at the same device. So you might swap around from device, and re-enabling Windows Hello on each device for the first time is kind of cumbersome. So bringing along one of those FIDO devices is quite a neat way of moving away from that we require strong authentication, but we don't want you to be into the hassle of Windows Hello when you don't have a fixed device.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's interesting to me too, because like even that technology, and because I used to talk about Windows Hello when I was a Windows 10 seller 10 years ago, right? Whenever that was. We would talk about it all the time, and the amount of I think progression we've made on the FIDO2 front, on passkeys, like even Microsoft right now, right? We have a big kind of rollout around passkeys because that's, I think, such an important technology moving forward. But I mean, like you've got form factors galore. I think I've got another one around here somewhere. You can tell I like FIDO. But I've got like this little guy, this little YubiKey. I've got this Auth Trend card that's got NFC and a little fingerprint reader on it. I mean, there's just so many different kind of options for that shared device scenario or for that roaming identity scenario. And while still maintaining the security that you need in order to just kind of verify who you are. And I think actually kind of tying it back even to our last conversation around AI, it's more important than ever that identity becomes central to your security, right? Or that it's at least a part of your security. Because a part of like accessing AI is all the data that backs it. And so you really want to make sure that if you're putting your data into any kind of AI engine, even if it's your own AI engine, you kind of want to make sure that the person that's interacting with your data is who they say they are. And so again, it kind of just falls back into that whole zero trust model that we designed for, and that kind of the industry's moving around. Cool. Any other questions around Windows Hello? That was fun. Nice little dive into history.
I've kind of there's a feature that should have been coined Windows Goodbye, but it's called dynamic lock. So do we see any way of Olav had the best case there. We had a flight to the US where his seat companion sitting next to him went on the ladies' room for men, not locking his device, and leaving Olav potentially as a hacker to give access to everything that was on this person's laptop. But there's this dynamic lock interaction within Windows. Could you tell more what that is, and are there any reasons why not this has seen a big adoption? I think it uses the RSSI signal strength for Bluetooth on your Windows Windows device and phone.
It did. To be honest, I don't know the current state of it, but assuming it's still around, because I think it is, what you're kind of talking about is this notion that if I pair my phone with my device, dynamic lock will recognize when that device is basically out of a certain range, and then it'll automatically lock my device. And I think that's still around. I don't use it, to be honest. I've just gotten really good at hitting the Windows key L. Like I just lock every time I get up to go anywhere. Even in my house, I'm constantly moving around, and I'll definitely lock my PC. But dynamic lock, I think is kind of that back end, to your point, a Windows goodbye, right? Like kind of you need to be able to ensure that when you walk away from your device that no one else can kind of, shoulder scrape and kind of go in and use it. But I don't actually, to be honest, I haven't used dynamic lock in a long time. And I know it was going to evolve to include presence sensing as well. And I haven't actually seen that kind of come to fruition, at least not on Surface. But very similar idea, which is like if it has a presence sensor, kind of like how our hub does. If it's got some kind of Doppler-based presence sensor and it notices there's not a human around, or there's not the same human that's been there for a while, it'll also lock your device as well. But yeah, I actually haven't seen dynamic lock in action in a while.
I think that will be much more interesting because Bluetooth reach today is about 15 meters or something like that. So if you're going to the bathroom on the plane or at the office, it will still be connected. So it's much better if the Windows Hello camera could be used to, okay, it's 2 minutes since I saw Oled, let's lock everything down. So
yeah, and I do think that's part of the reason it wasn't, probably going back to Alex, to your question, or why it wasn't like drastically or like adopted significantly across a whole bunch of different places, because Bluetooth's got a pretty decent range. And so like if I'm just walking around my office, it really didn't help me to not lock my device at that point. And I know they put some other kind of nuances to try to help combat that, but I recall that being like kind of a part of it. Don't yell at me, Windows folks out there that know better.
Maybe that's a topic for another podcast.
Yeah,
try to bring in people from the Windows Goodbye team.
Why not set up your screensaver to kick in after 30 seconds with inactivities? Then it should be safe, and everybody are working like
I mean, it does definitely still come down to some kind of good practice around things going to sleep after a certain time. I'll tell you, even if I'm taking a quick, just looking away from my device break for the day, like my device, at least our policy does have us go to sleep pretty quickly, just to make sure that we're trying to kind of minimize the amount of visibility into things that people shouldn't have. But yeah, it's a dynamic lock, huh? And I haven't heard that in a while.
I used to take if you left your computer, I used to take a snapshot of the background of your PC and then hide it and use the picture as a background, so you didn't have the start button or anything else, but it looks like you had it. So everybody thought the PC was destroyed because they have left it unattended for a while. So it freezes up. I cannot even push the start button. So
I heard the most evil prank someone did on that was they took a picture of the background and they duplicated it. So they had like 20 or 30 pictures in the same folder, and they altered one of them to add a mustache or something on it, and they changed it every minute. So every minute they had 1 minute of a picture with mustache, and what happened? And it doesn't seem that it's changing. You just lose your mind.
Oh yeah, that sounds like something IT folks in general would love to absolutely love to do.
Yeah. But in general, what kind of brought us off track here was that the Surface devices has built-in NFC on the top left corner. So
Yes.
these are vanguards of what you can see in both productivity but also security. And what's else within the Surface Pro 10?
Yeah. And by the way, you'll start hearing me especially talk about more about how like security is really kind of built into every layer. In fact, we design it with zero trust in mind. Every single one of our devices, we really, the moment we start kind of putting ink to paper of just drawing it out, or I should say maybe a Surface Pen to screen, but we really do design with zero trust, and that does include everything from supply chain all the way through how our hardware and firmware works up to things like NFC as well. But going back to the actual device itself, because I can go off on a tangent on security alone, we've got everything in this device in terms of like some of our key feedback points that we've heard from our customers around like, hey, love the Surface, love how it looks, but when I'm in a highlight situation, or maybe I'm out in the sun, I do want to be able to see my screen a little bit better. And so we actually introduced a whole new anti-reflective coating into just the Surface Pro 10. This AR coating, or this AR technology, I should say, because it's a little bit different from a coating. We actually built different layers into the actual display to make sure that not only you're going to get that anti-reflective experience, so really kind of reducing that kind of glare by I think about 50% if I remember correctly, but you're also not going to get any kind of I think negative impacts to the color itself or the touch experience. Because if you think about like Surface in particular, touch is such an important thing for us. We want to make sure that touch experience is really well. And sometimes those coatings, other coatings, can actually impact that because it's sometimes just a film that's just kind of glued on top of it. And ours, we literally redesigned our display technology to make sure that AR technology can get as thin and light as possible, as well as, but still kind of maintain the requirements it needs to be able to hit certain standards. You'll actually see a blog coming out about this as soon as I can get it done. But soon we'll actually really kind of go into detail about our AR technology. Some other things I would say that I love, and actually normally I'm using this device as my webcam, but I'm standing in, so I had to move some stuff around. But the camera on the Pro 10 is actually the same camera that you see in the new Copilot Plus devices, and this beautiful 1440p ultra wide camera that it just works stunningly. And like I said, normally I actually use it as my webcam. I'll take this tablet, I'll turn it upside down, and I'll actually use but the tablet both as another monitor, but also as my webcam, just because it's that good. Like it's backed by AI, so it's got all those kind of Windows Studio effects that I mentioned in terms of automatic framing and eye contact correction, and but it just looks stunning. Like it's as a webcam on the device. I think it's the first time in not in history, but I think it's definitely a time where we're starting to see maybe less of a need for separate webcams to a certain degree. I think obviously there's certain circumstances where a separate webcam is really handy, but like if I can have a webcam quality camera in a tablet or in a laptop, that means that I can look great anywhere I go. And the other thing I'll say was that ultra wide I kept mentioning, if I have multiple people that maybe want to be on the call, maybe I'm in a coffee shop and I have like 2 or 3 people that want to be on the call with me, that cam can actually zoom out to make sure that everyone still looks really good. So I think there's a lot of enhancements to the camera overall on Pro 10. Let's see, what else should I call out? The other thing that I'll definitely say is just the new Intel Core Ultra chip. Didn't really get the chance to really kind of go into this too much last time. They re-architected. I don't know if you guys know this. Like, it's not just a branding change. Like, they didn't just go from what was their old, like the I series that they used to have into this new Core Ultra series. Just from a marketing perspective, they actually did re-architect how that chip is built altogether, which makes it more efficient, which makes it better suited for AI experiences, which makes it have a better graphics experience. And so the new chips that came into the Intel Core, that came with the Surface Pro 10 and Laptop 6, these new Intel Core Ultra chips are just absolutely stunning. And I like I said, this is my daily driver. I do just about everything I do on this device, and it handles it swimmingly. So that's kind of the Pro 10. Anything I missed or any kind of questions around the Pro 10 that you might have?
It's quite interesting you mentioned the Intel Core Ultra processor, because it was give or take just days before or after the launch of the Surface Pro 10 that we found the spreadsheets, the documentations for the CPU at Intel's own website. So these are probably some of the first devices being shipped with that CPU.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, these were amongst the first commercial devices, especially that shipped with the Core Ultra, and that was actually one of our things that we just kind of wanted to do. Is we wanted, that was a kind of an ask from our commercial customers, is, hey, can you do us, like, can you make sure that we're just staying alongside Intel with their releases as close as possible? And so we were just a few months after them announcing it in the consumer space. We did help release the Surface Pro 10 and Laptop 6 in the commercial space, and be kind of amongst the first devices out there with this chip. For sure. And it was totally solid.
There is probably one question, and that is a question without an answer, because it says up to 19 hours of battery life. But what is your typical experience of what you could do from one of these devices? Because we all heard about Apple, Macintosh, and what they can do and what iPad can do, but we never get to hear the true story behind the new modern Windows devices.
Yeah, and I'll take this opportunity to maybe say, like, you'll notice like some of our disclaimers if you really zoom in on that slide there and kind of look at the tiny text. We've actually started moving towards measuring battery life in a slightly different way that's a little bit more accurate. It's either representative of video play or web play or web browsing, right? And I'll be honest, like, I'm on video all day long. I'm either on Teams calls or I'm doing stuff like this or I'm recording, whatever. And I've experienced, I still typically get all day battery life, no problem out of that. And so for me, that's anywhere from let's say 8 to 12 hour a day, depending on my day. But it's definitely at least getting to where I need to go. And I think kind of going back to like Intel, that speaks volumes to their new kind of architecture around performance and efficiency cores, right? Because they wanted to make sure that if they can kind of use their efficiency cores to enable that better, I think, battery life, and still kind of be able to kick the performance cores in when you need that extra juice for, insert whatever you need. But yeah, it's honestly, like, I don't like charge my devices. Like, you'll notice that some of these are plugged in, but I have a laptop that's upstairs that's running the Intel Core Ultra. I think I charge that thing maybe like once a week, maybe once every other week. I mean, they just have phenomenal battery life. That's personally anecdotal, so I should probably put that big old asterisk and disclaimer on there that is not an official Surface claim. But yeah, I mean, like, the battery life on that laptop is absolutely stunning. Like, it shocks me at how little I have to plug it in.
I think actually the best thing is that when you're using your PC, it doesn't make noise anymore, because usually you have just the noise all the time because you need to cool it down. But now with the new efficiency core, it will actually make it run quiet instead of making a lot of noise 8 hours.
Yeah. Alex, let's table that thought for sure. So there's a gentleman in Microsoft that I've worked with who works on the thermals and power management team, and there's a couple blogs that we're actually going to be releasing probably next month about thermal management. But there's like an entire science behind us partnering and kind of working alongside Windows and working alongside the likes of Intel and Qualcomm to try to like maximize the way that Windows uses power. And that's a thermal story, right? Because if you have heat, that typically impacts the way that power is absorbed and used. But that's also just how do we kind of maximize that battery life, and what's that experience? And his like journey and his whole story around all of that is fascinating. And in fact, I think we do have at least one blog that's out there that talks about our thermal stuff, but and that's all on Laptop Studio 2, if I remember. But yeah, keep an eye out. We've got more coming out on both the Pro 10 and the new Copilot Plus PCs. That'll be kind of a back-to-back release of those blogs, because there's just some really cool stuff that we're doing. We're actually baking our own kind of layer into Surface devices to kind of help with that power management. Yeah, and that does translate to that kind of better battery life and quieter performance, right? Because we want to make sure that you are having a good device both plugged in and unplugged. All right. So I keep sending laptop and kind of pointing to laptop. I'm clicking on the wrong one. We also released laptop 6. This is, I would say, the big call out from a laptop 6 perspective. Again, kind of bringing forward some of those commercial experiences. You've got that AR coding on there. You've got, that anti-reflective technology. You have that Copilot Plus key on the keyboard. I think for US folks, sorry, I don't know if this is really getting outside of the US and Canada at this point, but for US and Canada, we also offer a smart card reader option. So on our 15-inch model, which is over there somewhere, we've got a little nice little slot on the bottom right, bottom left that you can use a smart card to sign in with those devices. A number one ask from some of our like federal customers was a big one. We also introduced the new 1080p HD studio camera on the laptop, and I'll tell you, it's not the ultra wide that you get on the Pro, but it's still crystal clear. And again, I think it goes back to that whole story of we're kind of on this journey of if we can bring you webcam quality, cameras into a small form factor, it just means that you look great wherever you are. And then of course that's backed up by our Windows Studio effects and everything. The thing I like about the laptop is those Omnisonic Dolby Atmos speakers. Like I don't know if you guys use these or not, but I don't use any kind of like external monitors. I just use what comes with my device, and we do such a good job of tuning the mics and the audio to where it sounds like the room, it's immersive. Like the sound is immersive. Like I don't notice that it's only coming from my tablet. It actually kind of sounds like it's just kind of in this area. And the laptop, it just really shines, I think, on that front as well, because it has that kind of reflective surface coming off of the keyboard and off of the screen. So there's I think the audio on our laptops is just by far some of my favorite that's out there.
You mentioned the camera here is that it has this AI chip so that it can focus on multiple people in the same call. How is the sound if Oled and I were to take one of these Surface Laptop 6 for a run and use that for our podcast recording for voice? Does it capture different voices at the same way as well, or do you need a headset?
Let me see if I can play that back. So if you're using the laptop or the Pro for that matter, and you are both using it to record, does it pick
the same physical device, the same physical, we're in the same room, so we're just gonna pop up the device and we wanted to record everything we do for a podcast. Would that capture the voice for both?
So Windows Studio Effects today, specifically voice focus is probably what you're alluding to, that ability to kind of like cut out other noise. On the Laptop 6 and Pro 10, voice focus actually focuses on your voice and then gets rid of other noise in the background. So it's actually not necessarily other people talking.
So it will not hear Alexander at all then?
Sorry?
We will not hear anything from Alexander at all when he speaks. Just about noise.
Yeah. Is any kind of white noise or fuzz that's out there, it'll kind of kill that noise out. Yeah. No, but all kidding aside, that was kind of the technology's goal is if you think about like going into a coffee shop and hearing kind of just background noise, and that could be voices, but it's usually a collection of voices, not something that's targeted at a device. It would cut that out. But if you've got two people talking directly at the device, it'll probably impact how Oled would sound, because it's got to kind of think of what it's trying to achieve. I don't know, actually, because I'm isolated in my dungeons. I never get anyone that talks with me on my calls. So I don't know how that would work. But yeah, it should be more about isolating noise and not so much two distinct voices. Might be a fun twin experiment. I'll see if I can get you a Laptop 6. Let's work on that. No promises, but I'm working on it.
Yeah. You might get an upgrade to that RT device now, Oled. I see it in your eye. Yeah.
There you go. All right. So I've talked about AI PCs. Last week, I also mentioned Copilot Plus. Well, before I leave, any questions on the Pro 10 or Laptop 6?
Too many to take on one recording.
Yeah, there you go. I also mentioned last week about this idea of a Copilot Plus PC. And these are the new devices that we announced in May. These devices are all coming with this new Qualcomm Snapdragon X platform. So it's either an X Elite or X Plus processor. And then they also have these like hardcore other requirements around 16 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage, and then a minimum of 40 plus tops to run, I think, concurrently all the latest AI models that we're kind of ingesting into a Copilot Plus PC. And arguably, that's kind of the big thing about Copilot Plus PC is it comes with AI models already kind of ready to go. Still got to download some stuff, obviously, to make it work. But for the most part, the device was geared towards having AI baked into it and for developers to be able to take advantage of that and for Microsoft to be able to take advantage of that. But we went over that last week. We didn't really talk about the device itself. So you've got the Surface Pro. You might see it kind of mentioned as the 11th edition, but we kind of just call it the Surface Pro. And the call outs that I would say on here is that Pro now has the option for a new 13-inch OLED screen. So stunning coloration, stunning, just crisp color in terms of like just making sure that you've got kind of that deeper blacks and brighter brights, right? The thing that I also like about it is it's got this new adaptive color technology, which kind of helps offset it not having the anti-reflective technology, because the adaptive color does a very similar job of when I'm outside, I'm going to actually make sure that the colors remain the same I think experience, so to speak. So it'll kind of change that hue or change that that brightness to make sure that it looks as crystal clear as it did on the inside. So really cool technology kind of backing that. I think I've got some material coming out around there as well. HDR technology definitely in the screen now. So really kind of a solid story around just a beautiful looking device. The other thing I'll tell you is when I'm not using the Pro 10, I'm usually switching over to this other Pro, and I've got the Snapdragon X Plus, so I've actually got their the kind of like the our entry model on the Pro. Powerful chips. I mean, yes, you should be aware these are ARM-based devices, right? They're ARM-based chips, so they have a slightly different architecture, which, going back to your point earlier, there's so much that we can go into detail about what that means. But I think the thing that's crazy about it is historically ARM, let's even think about like the Pro 9 5G or even all the way back to RT, there was kind of these compatibility concerns. It's like, well, can my application run on ARM? Does it need to be recompiled? Well, we've built an all new emulation engine that we call Prism. And Prism honestly makes the compatibility problem significantly less of a thing, and that's because
that's the same thing as Apple used for their Rosetta. If I'm not mistaken.
Same idea, right? Yeah, Rosetta is their emulation engine. Prism is ours. I mean, it's one of those things where even when Apple kind of first came out, I would say that they rallied their developer base to kind of recompile for ARM, and then that's kind of something that we've also been doing. And so obviously we have our teams like Aperture, and we have some other folks that are out there that are going out to all of these different ISVs and developers and saying, hey, like for your application, please recompile an ARM64 version to run on ARM. And we're doing honestly a pretty solid job of getting, I think, the big folks that are out there. It's going to be usually your typical like small line of business folks, the mom and pop shop kind of devs that may or may not need to still recompile. But in those cases, a lot of those applications will actually still run because of this emulation ARM, and it runs really well. Like that's the thing that I love about this device is even though theoretically there's some recompiling going on or some emulation going on, it still runs very efficiently and very performantly. And so I'm continually impressed by just how good these devices are, and they look stunning. And the other thing that I'll say, especially about the Pro that I like, and I happen to be lucky enough to get one of these, is we have a new keyboard that we released with it. It's the new Flex keyboard. And not only sure, kind of looks like the rest of our keyboards do, right? Like there's not a drastic difference between these two models if you think about it. But you'll notice one key difference is that we brought the pen down. So the pen's actually now accessible even when you're using it as a type cover, because usually it's hidden behind a flap. We've also have a new haptic touchpad on here. So it's that same haptic touchpad technology that we had on our Surface Laptop Studio 2. So a lot of that kind of adaptive touch, which is really great for bringing inclusivity and adaptability into our touchpad. My favorite feature about the Flex keyboard, though, is I can fully use it wirelessly. I can do all of like my typing, AI searching, all that stuff from the comfort of my couch, all on this keyboard. In fact, right now it should be connected. I don't know if I've got anything. No, it's my start menu won't open up there. But like, I've been with Surface for a long time. This has been like a dream of mine. Like I've been wanting this experience forever, and we finally released it, and I'm so happy that it's finally a thing.
Do you remember the battery?
For doing that on the old keyboards way back, you had a Bluetooth dings.
Yeah, there was a battery pack and Bluetooth adapter. So you know, Olav, he of course have two of those.
Yeah.
You're talking about. I remember it. It was like it looked like a bar, right?
Yeah.
Like a little cylinder. Oh man, that always comes back. It's interesting because not only did we have the bar cylinder that made it Bluetooth, and I don't even remember, like, it kind of just disappeared. I remember it like getting decommissioned. It just kind of went away. And then
There's
the other
a
one is
verb
we
for
also
that.
had
There's a verb for that. It's called zooning. It just
Zooning.
disappears. Zooning, yeah. Just like zoom. It just went away.
Oh yeah. Oh, Zoom. Oh
Zoom,
man.
yeah,
I've got my Zoom
Zooning.
shirt around somewhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, there was also a battery type cover. I remember that one too. It was called the power cover, and it added an extra like hour or two batteries. I mean, that's models. That's so many models ago at this point. But yeah, so no need for the bar anymore. That technology is all in here. The other thing that actually is kind of nice about it too is because obviously we had to include some kind of battery life in here. They're sturdy as all get out. I mean, like, this thing doesn't really bounce at all anymore. Because I know that was kind of a concern on some of our older type covers. Like, we continue to kind of improve kind of that ergonomics of being able to type on your lap or even just type at your desk. You don't want kind of a lot of give on the keyboard, and so there's tons of different carbon layers to make sure that that there's not literally a ton of give. The thing that I'll also say, obviously, it's a Copilot button on here, but also has a new mic mute button. And I'll tell you, it's so handy to have a mic mute button and not have to find my Teams window anymore and go hit mute. Like, I just hit it on my keyboard and move on with life. The Flex keyboard's easily one of my favorite kind of releases from here. And I know that we're kind of I've been droning on, so I do want to actually just touch on one last device because I think this is actually worth calling out. The Surface laptop, or what you may or may not hear is referred to as the Surface Laptop 7th edition, is really probably the biggest fundamental overhaul to our laptop design in a while. It's an all new design. We have smaller bezels. In fact, we've managed to fit bigger screens into a smaller footprint. So you're looking at up to closer to like that 14-inch screen now, a 13.8 if I remember correctly. I'm getting my screen sizes mixed up right now. Anyway, you're getting a slightly bigger screen into a smaller form factor. So not only is it actually slimmer, lighter, you're actually getting more real estate. It's a beautiful, stunning screen on these devices. It's you've got the that Copilot keyboard or Copilot key on the keyboard. You've got that amazing Omnisonic sound and that kind of Dolby Atmos that I mentioned earlier. And then of course you've got actually tons of ports. You have the two USB-Cs and a USB-A on both the 13-inch and the 15-inch models. Honestly, these new Surface laptops are just they're a charm. I love them to death, and they have phenomenal battery life. This you'll see on the screen. It's got up to 22 hours on the new laptop. Killer devices.
This device might find itself underneath a Christmas tree. Maybe not, depending if my wife listened to the podcast or not.
Yeah, I ink a lot, so I like to draw on my stuff, and circle things and highlight things. So I'm debating very heavily whether or not I want the laptop or the Pro, because the new laptops don't have that inking layer, and that's to help kind of thing with the thinness, but also like no one really inks that much, I think, on a laptop. It's more of a tablet based experience. So this is the first time where I've really had to debate, like, do I want to make that full switch and not have inking anymore, or do I want to stick with my Pros? I'll probably stick with the Pro, but yeah, phenomenal device. I'm super excited to have it finally out in the wild, because we've been really excited to see it coming out. Oh, I should also mention both the Pro and the laptop also support 3 monitors. Finally, we can finally say we support 3 monitors on these devices. And so if you're the type of person that has monitors galore, that's a really good step in the right direction.
I know we will get follow-up questions on this. Is that 3 monitors in total or 3 external monitors?
3 external monitors. That's a great question. So there's definitely some nuances around it, like what the hertz is and kind of the different display types. I think there's even a full-on table that we've published out there in terms of what that support looks like. But that is 3 external monitors plus the display of the device. Now, you'll run out of ports before you get to those monitors, so you'll need to have some kind of dock in order to make that work. Or you can do daisy chaining as well. So daisy chaining is an option, and that's what I used to do. So I guess I'm gonna have to go back to exploring daisy chain monitors again. But 3 monitors, game changer. So excited about that. I've been really wanting that for a while. All right. I have talked forever as usual. Any other questions? I know otherwise I'll just kind of get out of your guys' way.
I think we just need to test them out before we know any more questions, right?
I have a question from one of our podcast readers and listeners and who watches these videos. But I think I want to watch one of the devices with the OLED screen before I can rely that question further, because we need to see how Windows reacts on OLED, because we only started to see some external monitors with OLED and a few laptops. So we got some questions on how Windows reacts on OLED in the future. But I think we can save that question for a later episode when we've had our touch on that OLED device.
Yeah, and look, these are brand new out in the market. So to your point, let's let them kind of prove their own stories and kind of get out there. I'm excited to see what people kind of interact with. I also love the fact that we're kind of leading that charge from a Surface perspective of including OLED, right? I think that's something we've been hoping to bring to our product line for a while. So, yep. Cool. Well, thank you. Thanks again for letting me come on here and kind of rant for a while like I usually do.
It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much for visiting us again. So, yeah.
Yeah. Happy to come on whenever you guys want.
See you around.
See ya. Thanks, everyone.